Hello, thanks for joining us today. During today's webinar, you're going to be learning about putting living first to create a culture where all people thrive. Barb Sutcliffe from the Schlegel-UW Research Institute for Aging will be leading us through the webinar. There's a PDF file of the handout for this webinar, which has the slides. It's in the handout box on the right-hand side of your screen. You might have to click on the arrow next to where it says handouts to get that box to expand so that you're able to see the PDF file and download it. And as well, just so you know, we're going to be sharing the webinar recording and a copy of those PDF slides with all of you who signed up for this webinar. And if you join us until the very end of the webinar, that's when an evaluation survey will pop up on your screen. And those of you from Ontario long-term care homes will receive a free copy of our Culture Change Guidebook. So be sure to stay tuned until the very end. And just in case you're wondering who's talking, I'm Kate Duchek, and I am a project officer with the RIA in Waterloo on Ontario, and I'm going to be your moderator for this webinar. This webinar is brought to you through the Ontario Centre for Learning, Research and Innovation in Long-Term Care at the RIA. The RIA is a nonprofit charitable foundation that links training and practice to enhance care and quality of life for older adults. The RIA supports research and puts it into practice so it can inform programs, be part of any training that students and others take, and as well to help change practice and policy. As a program of the RIA, the Ontario Centre for Learning, Research and Innovation in Long-Term Care, better known as the CLRI, strengthens quality of care and living for people who live in long-term care homes across Ontario through training, through various forms of schooling, and as well as through knowledge mobilization. The Ontario CLRI, in case you didn't know, is hosted at 3 locations, so the RIA is one of them, and as well it's at Baycrest in Toronto and at Briere in Ottawa. And the Ontario CLRI at the RIA does this thanks to funding from the Government of Ontario. And before we start the webinar, I would just like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional territories of the Indigenous peoples whose all land we are fortunate to be on. And we're really glad to have Barb leading this webinar today, and I'll turn it over to her now.
Hi, good afternoon. Today we're going to be putting living first, creating a culture where everybody thrives. We're sharing the agenda with you here today. We're going to do an introduction to the Schlegel University of Waterloo Research Institute for Aging. We're going to be talking about what culture change is all about. We'll provide an introduction to working together to put living first guidebook. We'll talk about how to start your culture change journey, and we'll share with you some culture change resources. The Schlegel-UW Research Institute for Aging, also known as the RIA, is a charitable nonprofit foundation. The RIA's mission is to enhance care and quality of life for older adults through partnerships in research, education, and practice. Ultimately, we drive innovation to tackle the biggest issues facing an aging population, and then we share what works. The RIA believes strongly that collaboration is the key to driving innovation and accelerating impact. At the cornerstone of this philosophy is the Center of Excellence for Innovation and Aging, located at the University of Waterloo's North Campus and the RIA's home base. The RIA building sits in the middle of a continuum of care, including long-term care and retirement and independent living operated by Schlegel Villages. When complete, the center will be home to 600 older adults. The upper floors of the RIA building include state-of-the-art research labs, and the lower hosts a living classroom where Conestoga College, personal support workers, and registered practical nursing students take their courses. Students gain hands-on experience as they learn with and from older adults and team members from long-term care and retirement. The main floor holds multi-purpose space where the university and college classes are offered and events take place. The space can also be rented to community groups. The center is a purpose-built to support a vibrant community where older adults live, students learn, and researchers explore so that we can change the way we age in Canada. The Canadian definition of culture change is as follows. Culture change is an ongoing, holistic journey that includes re-examining values, beliefs, attitudes, language, practices, and policies, and exploring the full range of efforts needed to transform the culture into a community where everybody thrives. This definition was released at the Walk With Me conference in Alberta in 2014. So what is culture change? It's a shift from an institutional model of care to a social or relational life-affirming approaches. It's providing care, but it's more than that. It's supporting living. We do have to look at the biomedical, but we want to shift towards a social, relational view of aging. It's not looking at tragedy, but it's looking at the possibilities narrative. It's not just ageism, ableism, but looking at positive attitudes towards aging people of all abilities and a culture of inclusion. Today, we're going to share with you the process that was used to guide the journey of one organization. This is the process that worked and continues to work with others who have embarked on the journey. But just as every organization is unique, so too will their journey change, be unique. There is no right way to make culture change a reality, but we believe that embarking on a collaborative, process-oriented journey, guided by shared values and supported by your community's own strengths, will set yourself up for success. A truly collaborative culture change journey seeks to honor, celebrate, and build on this quality of uniqueness. So, requirements for resilient change. We want to create resilient, deep system changes. We aren't looking for a Band-Aid solution, but rather a solution that can stand the test of time. This type of deep system change requires transformation at 4 levels. First, we're looking at personal transformation. Rosemary Fagan, one of the pioneers of the culture change movement in the United States, says, "Culture change begins within ourselves." Personal transformation is very hard work because it involves deep, critical self-reflection that permeates everything that we do. It's the way that we speak, it's the way that we act, it's the way that we relate to each other. For those of us who work in the healthcare, this transformation requires a philosophical shift away from clinical skills and activities towards the person and the relationship. The balance between person and task can be challenging because the people we serve have the needs that require clinical expertise. Operational transformation. It's impossible to build a transformed organization on good thoughts and intentions alone. This type of transformation requires a very strong philosophical and practical commitment from all members of the community. And that could be long-term care, retirement, or other community organizations. Because we know that personal transformation required for culture change impacts the way we speak, the way we act, and relate to each other, an organization may try to implement culture change by changing people. People should never be treated as the object of someone else's plan for change. Communities need to respect their members as the experts of their own lived experiences who are able to determine their own roles and goals in the culture change process. Members of leadership teams need to be humble enough to realize there might be a different way of doing things and that the wisdom required for this change may already exist within their organization. There is not a one-size-fits-all solution for transforming an organization's culture. The transformation is about the process, and it's not about the outcomes. We move on to the environmental transformations. There are some physical design features that perpetuate the institutional model. Some homes have moved away from the nursing station because that's just so traditional. of the old culture. While it may be possible to change physical features, we need to make sure that the changes are supporting the operational transformation. The most important part is a philosophical commitment and transformation. Transformed cultures can still exist in ugly buildings. Lastly, we're looking at societal transformations. During his keynote address at the Walk With Me conference in 2014, Dr. Bill Thomas described the modern societal view of aging as follows. There is no one old age. Old age is what we make it. And unfortunately, in North America, we live in a shared culture that has come to regard old age as a time of decline. We've come to think benevolently of older people as broken versions of their formerly impressive selves. This perception needs to change, and every step we take to move towards a more inclusive society is a step in the right direction. Culture change requires ownership and empowerment. In the old culture, management was always looking for staff to buy in. But in the new culture, everybody has a role to play and a voice to be heard. Sometimes people, most often in positions of power, think they can transform their community single-handedly. Although well-intentioned, these individuals end up implementing discrete initiatives that fix a problem that they perceive to be important. While it's true that these efforts may result in operational, environmental, and pragmatic modifications, perhaps even improvements, this type of change is not really a culture change. Think of what would happen if that charismatic leader were to leave the organization. Would any of the changes be sustained? Has he or she really created a resilient change system? One of the hallmarks of a transformed culture is that everyone's voice is heard, and they're considered to be the experts in their own lived experience. This cannot happen when people in positions of power or leadership teams unilaterally make decisions about what is going to happen. By honoring each person's experiences and knowledges, all those involved within a given context can have ownership of agreed upon improvements and changes, as opposed to having to buy into some ideal driven by top-down process. So culture change is championed by collaborative leaders. Culture change is not a top-down mandate implemented or opposed by others. Culture change is mobilized through partnerships and collaboration, working together with one another. Culture change isn't an end product or an outcome. Culture change is looking at new possibilities, thinking outside the box. Culture change isn't solely a quality improvement initiative that you can tick off the box. Culture change is an evolving process. It's always changing. There's no end in sight. Culture change is not a specific program or a model of care. Culture change builds upon the strengths by reflecting on the best of what currently is happening and by working towards what could be in the future. And culture change is definitely not one-size-fits-all approach. Working together to put living first, Guidebook. You'll find that most of the information that I've discussed today can be found in our guidebook, Working Together to Put Living First. The Schlegel Village's homes have used an appreciative inquiry approach throughout their culture change journey. You'll hear me refer to this as the AI approach. So in traditional problem solving, people would be focusing on what's wrong, where with an appreciative inquiry, we're looking at what's working. In traditional, we're identifying problems, where with the AI process, we're appreciating and valuing the best of what is. Traditional, we're searching for the root cause or failure or what's not working in the organization, instead of searching for root causes of the successes and building upon them. Traditional, we're trying to fix the past, where AI, we're trying to create a new future. Traditional, we're looking at obstacles and treating them as barriers, where the AI process looks as obstacles and then they're treating them as ramps into new territories. AI is not meant to avoid or ignore problems. If people want to talk about problems, they will most likely will. But hopefully, by engaging in some appreciative thinking, problems can be reframed as opportunity areas, like ramps into a more ideal future. I'd like to share a quote with you by Marcel Proust. He says, "The real act of discovery consists not in finding new lands, but seeing with new eyes." So the guidebook, Working Together to Put Living First, is designed for anybody who's interested in embarking on a culture change journey within their organization. The AI process is made up of 4 cycles. The first one is the discovery phase, or appreciating what gives life to an organization. It's the best of what's happening within the organization. The second is the dream phase, or envisioning results. What might be, and what would you like to see in the future? What's the world calling for? What's your organization wanting to see? And talking and having that discussion. The third phase is the design phase, which is co-constructing. What should be, and what do we need to do to get to that place? What does the ideal place look like? We need to build that vision of the future. And the fourth is the destiny phase. That's where there's the sustainability of all the hard work that you put into it. Who do we need to empower to get things done? How do we continue to learn more? And what do we need to adjust or improve on to keep the momentum going? What is our way forward? What does it mean to change culture? In most general terms, we define culture change as a shift from an institutional model of care to a social model of living. A shift in the focus from providing care to supporting living. We still must provide excellent health care, but without making it our primary central focus. Culture change calls us to put living first. Fagan suggests that the following constructs need to transform. Individual and societal attitudes towards aging and older adults need to be revisited. Attitudes of older adults towards themselves and their own aging process. How do we see ourselves? Attitudes and behaviors of caregivers towards those for whom they care. Are we considering the desires of our residents? Governmental policies and regulations, and the systems across the continuum of aging services as we transition from an institutional model of care to a social model of living. So the things that are listed under institutional model of care, they're not bad things. We have to focus on care, but we want to shift to more of a focus on living. We want to make sure that we're being inclusive and that we're not making decisions for residents, but we're making decisions with residents. That we're getting rid of those hierarchical departments and working more collaboratively as a team to make that shift. The language we use in our day-to-day speak is very important. We often hear very derogatory words used in the media, and it can affect the way that we think of ourselves and others. We live in an aging society. We live in an ageist society, and it violates human and civil rights. Ageism seems to be the last socially accepted form of discrimination, but it's just as harmful as any other ism: racism, sexism, ableism. Some will say, well, it's just a joke. It's just a funny birthday card, or it's just a witty saying. But it's no laughing matter. You see, ageism creates a negative reality of aging as it influences public policy, employment practices, standards of health care, and how people are treated in society. But what's worse is that we internalize it, and the results limit our own choices about how we live and how we age. Here's an example of one of the exercises that we do with an organization to gather a sense of where an organization sees themselves on a scale between being very institutional or being very much practicing a social model of living. The exercise can be completed individually, and then when the larger group, and then used with a larger group using the collaborative organizational assessment tool. We look at the 9 pillars that are listed on this assessment. Today, we're going to look at 2 of these domains, and we're going to ask you to work through part of this exercise, and then at a later date, you can take this exercise and do it with your team. This assessment can be found in a guidebook, and then you can make copies of it for your own use. And I'll turn this over to Kate to explain it a little bit more.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Barb, for giving us this overview. And so I'm just launching a poll based on the questions Barb was just bringing up. So the first one that we're going to cover is on your screen there. So if you just think on your own, or if you're with a group of people, so how would you rate your long-term care home or aging services community on a scale of 1 to 5 regarding care and living, where, you know, maybe 1 is that you're very focused on care, 2 is that you're focused on care, 3 is maybe somewhere in the middle, that you're somewhat focused on care and on living, 4 is focused on living, and 5 means that you're giving yourself a score that you're very focused on living, so going more in line with a social model. And so if you just want to take a few minutes or another minute or so, looks like we've got some responses here so far, and then I will flip it back just to show you all what the rest of people on our webinar are thinking today. Give it a couple more seconds there. And it looks like the poll is staying pretty stable there. So I'm just going to close it and flip it back. And so as you're able to see on the screen here, it's showing the poll results. And so it looks like a lot of you found that you're in the middle of the road, that you're, somewhat focused on care and as well as a focus on living. Some of you are saying that you're, still pretty focused on care, and that there as well is some other people on various parts of the scale there. So thanks for letting us know that. And then, like Barb said, we have another question for you. I'm going to launch that here. And so similarly, so on a scale of 1 to 5 again, so how would you rate your long-term care home or aging community regarding decision-making? So where 1 means that you feel that you always make decisions for residents, 2, you're feeling like you and the people you work with tend to make decisions for people living there. 3 is that you're feeling like you somewhat make decisions for and with residents. If you give yourself a score of 4, is that you feel that you tend to make decisions with the people living there for the most part. And 5 is that you're giving yourself a score that you always make decisions with residents. And it looks like people are still entering in their responses there on the poll. And just give it another few seconds there for people to select which option you think fits best for your workplace and the community where people are living. And it looks like the poll results are in, so I'll just flip it back to you. Okay, so it's sharing the poll results up there now. So it looks like most of you again rated yourself in the middle of the road there, which is great. That you feel that you somewhat make the decisions for and with people who are living in your workplace, and as well, some of you gave yourself a score of 4. Is that you tend to make decisions with residents, and that some other of you rated yourself on other points of the scale, which is great. So thanks very much for doing that, and thanks for being honest with us. And then so that brings us to some follow-up questions we have. And so for these two questions, which are up on your screen there now, so, the questions we have for you is for those of you who scored yourself 2 or less on the first poll question about a focus on care versus a focus on living. So we're just wondering, that if you want to share, and it's, just sharing with us, we are not going to name anyone's names or anything like that. So we just want to know why, to get a general sense, because there's other people out there who score themselves the same way. So why did you score that, and what do you think you would have, and what do you think would have to happen in order for your long-term care home or for your aging services community to focus more toward a focus on living? And so you'll just want to type in your responses in the questions box on the right-hand side of your screen there, and you might have to click on the arrow next to where it says questions to get that box to open, just in case it's closed. All right, it looks like some of you are saying that that the culture change journey is quite early on at your home, so that's why you gave yourself that rating. And you're saying, that this same person was saying that it started 1 year ago, so change is happening at a gradual pace.
That's wonderful. And, the journey does need to move slowly. If you try to make changes too quickly, they're not likely to be as sustainable. So small changes are good changes. It starts that ripple effect.
Okay, thanks, Barb. And then somebody else was saying that they gave themselves or their home that score because the culture is mainly task-focused.
Yeah, that's a tough one, especially when for the nurses in the group, because you're so task-focused in your training, and it's sometimes hard to switch around, but it's perseverance. It's working with the residents and knowing that you're doing the right thing for the residents, and that you can be flexible and still get your task done, creating that happy balance.
Okay, thanks. And somebody else was sharing their responses. And so this person was saying, 1, that care is the top concern of their home, with living and other elements coming in second. And then point number 2 from this person is that it's always scary to be the first to be doing something, and that change that it is going on, but it's happening at a slow but sure pace there.
I think one of the things that really makes it a lot easier is if you put yourself in the place of the individual living in your home. And what would you want? One day you're living at home and being able to do things on your own schedule, your own time. You know that you have to take your medications. You know that you have to eat, and at some point you have to bathe. But does it really have to be at 7 o'clock every Tuesday morning? So looking at if that was you that was in that room, what would your preferences be? And you can appreciate that things need to be done, but let's learn how to be flexible and to work collaboratively with our team members, because what you do does affect all of the other players, and that's why it's very important in a culture change journey to be very collaborative, knowing that everything that is done will affect the whole team. And we're there for the residents, and that's why we're wanting to make the change. For the residents, for the workers, for everybody that's involved.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a really good point. And so one other person was asking Barb if you have any tips for how to move things toward a focus more on living.
I think it's having the conversation, making sure that you're engaging all players. So you don't want to do it in silos, because, as I said, every action has a reaction. So we need to be involving our family members. When a family member comes in and mom hasn't been bathed because she wanted to do it later, or she isn't dressed because mom wanted to wait till later, and you're honoring the preferences of your residents, and we haven't engaged the family members in letting them know that we're involved in a culture change, and this is one of the things that might be happening. We have to make sure all the players are around the table so that everybody understands the processes that are going to be happening. And it's about making sure that we've engaged everybody that's going to be sitting around the table.
Okay, that makes sense. Then we're just going to move on to the next set of questions that we have for you all here. And so regarding poll question number 2 is what this one is about. So for those of you who scored yourself 4 or more, or maybe if you rated yourself as a 3, but maybe, kind of leaning toward 4. So this was a question regarding, that you make decisions for residents versus making it with them. So we just want to know, and again, we're not going to be sharing any names. So we just want to know just for the group learning here. So why did you give yourself the score, and what are you doing to work toward a more social model of living? So we're just curious what your responses are for that. Just to see what's going on out there. Maybe we're able to share some common learning or tips. And again, just type in your responses for this question to the questions box on the right-hand side of your screen, and you might have to click on the arrow to get the white space to open so you're able to type in your responses. Yep, and again, so just for, those of you who, were maybe scored yourself a 3, 4, or 5 regarding decision-making for residents, rather than decision-making with residents, we just want to know why you gave yourself that score, and what your community is doing to work toward a more social model of living. We got a couple of responses here. So one of you is saying that you were able to do that by empowering staff or team members to practice resident-centered care.
So I'd be interested in what specifically you're meaning by practicing resident-centered care. Are you able to share any examples with that?
Yeah, so we'll keep an eye out for that person to type in their response. Somebody else I put in that care plans are now from the person's point of view. So instead of saying on the care plan that the resident requires 2 people to do transfer, it now says I can transfer with the full assistance of 2 team members.
And really that's at the root of culture change, is making sure that we're hearing the voice of the resident, and we're doing whatever we can possible to make sure that we are looking after the best interests of the individual and their wishes and desires. Wonderful example.
Okay, yeah, and thanks very much for sharing that. We got some more responses here. So one person is saying that they have a very engaged resident council, and that team members are also quite engaged, and that the expectation there is that they all work together with residents.
Mm-hmm. Transparency is so important. If things are done in isolation, that's when we tend to get into difficulties. So being able to share all of the changes that are happening within the council and within the different meetings is a wonderful way to help the momentum continue.
Okay, thanks for that, Barb. And the one person who had shared their response that they empower staff to practice resident care was following up with some ways that they're doing it, such as having consistent team members, building customer service into all team members' profiles, and allowing for items to be care planned.
Wonderful. Acknowledging that one way doesn't fit all, that we're able to address those individual needs of the residents, and giving permission for those people that know the residents best is so important. And I love to hear the dedicated scheduling. That just would make a world of difference in my life, knowing that I'm only having to deal with half a dozen people as opposed to 20 or 30 people on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, to really get to know intimately the folks that you're working with.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I found the same thing when one of my grandmothers first moved in to a long-term care home, and I would go to visit her because she lived pretty close to where I lived and worked then. But then I found it strange that there was all these different people who would come in her room, and I was just like, Grandma, do you know who that person is, or just what's going on here? Yeah, so it is great to hear that there are some different ways of kind of seeing it, that that we happen to work in these people's homes and try to see it from their view rather than having this constant line of people coming in with different faces, different names.
You don't want to have to keep telling your story. You want to know that the person that's coming in to see you knows all about you and what your likes are and what your dislikes are and what works well and how to do things.
Indeed. So we got some more examples from people there about how you're moving toward more of a focus on living. And one person is saying that staff or team members are getting trained on getting consent before proceeding with any task. So that way the person is aware of the task and that they're able to be part of it.
Yeah, acknowledging that they are the center of the process. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and some other examples here is trying to request resident choices. That care is really centered on their needs and preferences, and that they do this by supporting staff to make actions that show that the people living there are in fact able to make those choices.
Yeah, the one thing about culture change is you don't really know what's going to happen. You know, it's a lot of trial and error, and there is risk, and there will be successes, and there will be failures. But it's important to be able to allow those choices to happen and work with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there was somebody else who had a similar point there that that they're able to move toward a more social model of living by that they're moving from using the term resident refused in any notes to having staff or team members say that the person chose not to.
Opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So again, going back to seeing it from the person's side of the person's side of things, and maybe what it's like for them living there as opposed to what it's like for us who happen to work there.
It's amazing how impactful just a simple change of language is going to be. Instead of talking about a person being admitted into a home, to just say somebody's moving into their new home. Admitted sounds very clinical, as if you're going to be admitted into a hospital and that's where you're stuck, right? Moving in is a new experience, a new opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
These are some great examples.
Yeah, and I'll just read through just a couple more of them. We got quite the list popping up on our screen here, which is awesome. And so some of you are saying that having person-centered training has been really key. So that way, getting people who are using the same terms, same actions, and that really starts from having the same mindset and knowledge. And that's some other people are saying that that the terms and the words we choose to use are very important, which is wonderful. All right. Well, thanks everyone for sharing that. We're just going to keep going, and we will come back to some of your comments here. Barb just has a few more things that she wants to share.
Yeah, I'd like to share with you some resources that you might want to consider if you're going to embark on a culture change journey of your own. The first is the Working Together to Put Living First Culture Change Guidebook. As I said earlier, most of the materials in this presentation can be found in this guidebook. This guide can help you get started on your culture change journey, or you may want to consider working with the culture change coach from the Research Institute for Aging. As mentioned earlier by Kate, you can receive a free hard copy of this guide by completing the survey at the end of this presentation. The second is Living the Dementia Journey. It's an award-winning evidence-informed training program for those who support people living with dementia, but it transcends dementia. It's really good learnings for working with anybody. The teachings of this program provide valuable tools to support teams embarking on a culture change journey. It applies a person-centered approach to provide individual support. LDJ, the short form for Living the Dementia Journey, offers a one-day overview workshop, a two-day in-depth workshop, and it also has a train the trainer option that's available so that you can build capacity within your organization. We also have two programs that are offered by Conestoga College in partnership with the Research Institute for Aging. One is the Excellent in Resident-Centered Care, or ERCC. It's a Train the Trainer program, and it's designed for personal support worker team members who provide peer-to-peer training with the goal of achieving better care and better outcomes in their workplace. Leadership in Long-Term Care and Retirement Living is another program which focuses on essential leadership capabilities that are in demand for today's leaders and designed for current as well as aspiring leaders across all departments and at all levels of your organization. These two programs were developed in partnership with the RIA and the Conestoga College, and they've been utilized by the aging services community for several years and are credit courses. All of these courses will enhance the skills of team members and, of course, benefiting residents with the new knowledge that you would obtain from that.
All right, wonderful. Thanks, Barb. So now we're going to open it up to any other questions you all might have for Barb. So just let us know in the questions box there. Just type in any questions you have, any comments. And we got Barb's contact. We have her phone and as well as her email up on the screen. So if you want to get in touch with her that way anytime as well, just in case some questions, pop in your head later today or at another point in time. And again, we're going to be sharing a PDF copy of these slides with you all and for all people who signed up for the webinar. Yes.
Yes, very happy to answer any responses that come later.
All right, and so one question we have for you, Barb, is one person's wondering if any of the teachings you just mentioned are available online.
At this point in time, there are not, but the guidebook, as I said, this is where the material has been taken from, so it has some step-by-step things that you can be doing within your own organization, and yeah, fill out that survey and we'll definitely send a hard copy of this to you. It's also available, the guidebook is also available as a free download, but it doesn't have all of the appendices attached. So yeah, there are lots of learnings and exercises that you can get from the guidebook.
Yeah, thanks, Barb. And I was just going to say, I know with ERCC that it does have the train the trainer model, so it's where team members can train other team members. And I think, it's part that people do the training in person, and as well that there's some training that they're able to do online. So whether that's a better option for you and your teams. And as well with the leadership program for long-term care and retirement living, it follows a similar model, where, it's spread out, I believe, over 6 to 12 months, so that way people can choose. And I think there is during that time span, a couple of in-person class dates, and then it has the training, so that way, people who tend to be working already full or part-time jobs are able to complete the other training as they have time to do that.
Yeah, there's 5 in-class days, and it's spread out throughout the program, and in total, I think the program is 181 hours, and there are assignments, yeah, and it can be done as a single cohort, so an organization can arrange for a class just for your organization, and it can be tailored then to your specific organization in certain parts of the program, or it can be a mixed cohort, and yeah.
Okay, and then some other comments and questions we have here is that one person was saying that, that they're thinking that it, comes down to having channels of reliable communication, that most homes don't have anybody who has that role, and that, there tends to be maybe not so many people who have that knowledge to achieve effective communication paths, and she is wondering if you have any suggestions.
Again, this is where it's important to bring in all of your stakeholders to determine, because it's not the same from organization to organization. You have to identify what communication techniques that you have available within your organization, and so that's your family members, your residents, your team members, everybody that's involved, and find out what's been working in the past, and if there's opportunities to introduce some different forms of communications. I know one home that we've been working with the culture change journey has changed their meeting structures where they were having so many separate meetings, one for families and one for residents and one for team members, where they're starting to have more town halls so that the same message is being heard at the same time. And they're just finding so much better success that the families then know that they're hearing exactly what everybody else is hearing, and it's brought them more on board.
Okay, yeah, that's really great to hear. And another question, comment we have for you, Barb. So this person's response was into our earlier poll question about, why they gave themselves a score of 3, so that they're somewhere in the middle of having a focus on care and as well a focus on living. And so, they gave themselves that score because their residence council is not very active and they're not really sure why. And so they're finding that's really a key element that's missing.
I don't think you're alone with having a family council that's not very active. A lot of homes, ones that we've worked with as well, that have difficulty with getting an engaged family council, and some can be quite militant and thinking that they need to make sure that things are all being done correctly. I encourage you to make sure that when you're doing your culture change journey that they're very much part of all of your communique, so that there are no surprises and that they understand why you're doing certain things. And ask for their input and how they might see things being done differently. So hearing the voice of all is so important to be able to have greater success with change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely having a whole home approach. So having the family members' voice, the team members' voice, leadership voice, and
the residents.
Yeah, and it's very important to have them involved and to try to find out why or what methods to reach them. Maybe some people don't like being in large groups, which tends to be how councils work. But then maybe there's some other ways to get creative and to get those feedback from people, whether it's doing, having some questions with them on a one-on-one basis, maybe getting some volunteers or students coming in to ask people questions, just so, so that way if they feel like, well, they don't want to share this with any of the team because then they're, worried that they're going to say anything that might come across as negative, rather than, just giving them a chance just to share their views.
The other thing that you'll see in the guidebook is something called learning circles. Some of you might be very familiar with learning circles, and that's a great opportunity to hear everybody's voice, because in a learning circle there's no crosstalk, and those people that are a little uncomfortable sometimes because the dominant people often take over the conversation, it gives everybody a voice. So if you have a situation in any of your meetings where somebody seems to be taking over the conversation, you might want to consider introducing learning circles. So everybody actually has an opportunity to share or pass, and then their voice is heard.
All right, thanks. And another question here is this person wants to know whether we have an evaluation tool for a home to gauge where they are on their culture change journey, and to keep track of things as they continue their journey. So this person wants to know if we have anything beyond the tool that we shared earlier.
Well, actually, that's something that's in development right now that we are starting to utilize with our culture change coaching. So we will do that prior to us starting our coaching process. The homes that we've been working with have opted to do anywhere from a 12-month program to a 24-month program with the coaching services. So with this new tool that we're introducing, we'll be able to gauge some shifting, in the early days, but we really, it depends on how long we're working with an organization. Sometimes change isn't too measurable. Within the first year you can see signs of it, but not necessarily on a measurement tool, assessment tool.
All right, thanks, Barb. And just to follow up to your response there from the same person or group of people, is that they want to know what is the cost for our coaching services, and what is the general time frame for it?
Yeah. So that's something that we'll probably have to take offline, and I'm happy to have you send me an email and then I can call you back and talk about it. It really depends on the size of your organization. Obviously, it's going to depend on what financials you have, where you're located. With our coaches, we do travel all over Canada and into the States, so depending on what our travel and accommodations will affect the cost, and what the capacity is within your own organization as to whether you have some people that might be able to do part of the training. But as I mentioned, we're anywhere between a 12-month contract to 24 months. That seems to be what works the best, and then there are follow-up opportunities for missing links as we identify the needs of an organization. So we have a basic template, but each organization is unique in what their needs are. Okay,
great. And then somebody else has a question that they want to know, so what are the next steps in the culture change journeys for some of the homes you are working with?
We're looking at sustainability, and culture change never stops. Schlegel Villages is celebrating 10 years since they started their culture change journey, and we look back what we did 10 years ago and think, what were we thinking back then? At the time, it was better than what was happening, but today there's always changes that are happening. So it's evaluating where you are in the organization. Are you happy with what's happening, or is there still opportunity for improvement? So if you're a home that you don't feel that you have the expertise to make changes without supports, that's where we come in. We look at the skill set that's there and what your ideal future looks like. We're looking at that 4D process that I talked about, and what would you like to see change? And then we look at what needs to happen educationally wise with your team. Sometimes not all team members come on board with you when you're starting that journey, and people sometimes will have to self-select and decide, is this journey for me, or am I still in the traditional model and I'm not on board with this wonky culture change stuff that you're trying to do. And sometimes you have to make decisions for team members to be able to successfully carry on with your culture change journey. Hopefully that answered your question.
All right, definitely. Thanks, Barb, and thanks for you all for sharing with us your questions and comments. It's all really good to know, and it's great learning for us and for everyone joining us for this webinar, or those who are going to view it at a later time, because we will be having the recording of it available within the next few weeks. And so please feel free to get in touch with Barb any time whenever you have any questions pop up. And as well, please feel free to reach out to the Ontario CLRI team. You're able to get in touch with us using any of the options that we have on your screen there. We have a toll-free 1-800 number that some people have been using, which is fantastic. And just a friendly reminder that when we close out the webinar in the next few minutes, that if you complete the brief survey that pops up on your screen, we're going to send those of you from Ontario Long-Term Care Homes a free copy of our Culture Change Guidebook. So be sure to do that. And I'd like to thank Barb for leading us through this webinar, which had a lot of inspiring and very practical tips. So thank you, Barb. And we're going to be ending the webinar now. And as always, just feel free to get in touch with us anytime whenever you have questions, or if you have any ideas for topics, whether it's this one on culture change or any other areas of learning that you want to learn more about. Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye, and thank you.